You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into the world of volatility with in-depth analysis, trading activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. And now, it's time to take a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again. It is Friday. It's time to talk some vol. Yes, it is time once again for Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com. Hope you're having a great trading week. We are here to wrap it up in fine style for you listeners with a little bit of vol views. Of course, if you don't want your content week, your trading week to end with vol views, join us after the show. I'll be joined by our good buddy, the options guy. I got a feeling he's going to want to talk about a straddle or two. He seems to be pretty straddle crazy lately. Yes, on Options Oddities. Only place to get that, the optionsinsider.com/pro. So if you want to get past the velvet rope, you want the party to keep going after vol views. Of course, you want to get pro Q&As. Awesome banger pro Q&A earlier this week. Mr. Kevin Green, we went deep into a wide variety, a bevy, if you will, of underlyings, including VIX and the VIX futures, which is kind of fascinating, as well as all sorts of other goodies and giveaways coming up, live streams, all kinds of fun. Your own podcast feed, the optionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to learn more as we learn who's joining us on this fun-filled Vol Views Friday. First, back to the stormy shores of Maine we go. You know, we didn't get a chance to go there on Monday because the markets were closed, so he did not have a chance to lose the trivia contest this week. I am talking, of course, about the rockingest of lobsters, Mr. Andrew Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com. Back at the end of the week, Mr. Rock Lobster, welcome back to the show, sir.
It is a pleasure to be here, although isn't the trivia it's closer. It's closer. I'm still down, but it's closer.
Yes, I think you were within a respectable half a point or so, or something like that, which is the closest you've been in many years.
Something not just terrible. Right.
It has nothing at all to do with the fact that the contest just started. It had nothing to do with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, stay tuned for Monday's option block listeners to see if the Rock Lobster can maybe, dare I say it, take the lead for once. That might be the first time ever. We'll see. No pressure. No pressure. As we are also joined today by our good pal, the once future and present Dr. VIX, Mr. Russell Rhoads. Mr. Rhoads, welcome back to Vol Views Friday, sir.
As always, very, very happy to be here. And I'm glad that you did not call me the Joe Biden of VIX.
Are you still on that? That guy from a week ago, he's living rent free in your head. You got to let him go.
He's not. I haven't checked that much, but I don't think you said anything else about me on. And honestly, I just said it because I wanted to hear Andrew laugh.
Hey,
that's really why I just said that. No, I could care less.
If someone out
Trust
there,
me, there are plenty of other people living rent free in my head, and he ain't one of them.
You know, somebody likes Biden, that could be a huge compliment to them. So you never know how that person meant it at the end of the day. But you know how we mean it, listeners. We mean to kick off the show in high style with a little bit of the old volatility review.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Vol Review, the portion of the show where we break down, surprise, surprise, what's popping off this week and indeed today from a vol perspective. And coming into the start of the show, we were looking a little bit red after flirting with some new all-time highs earlier in the week. We were giving some of that back already this morning, listeners. The S&P was off in the ballpark of 0.5% or so. The other major indices somewhere in similar ballpark. And it does seem, as VolViews tends to do, VolViews tends to shift the markets into high gear in one direction or the other. And right now we are shifting into extreme red gear. S&P off over 1% now, off 1.2%. Dow off 1.33%. NASDAQ off 1.5%. So markets kind of getting a gut punch right now. Looks like the latest consumer sentiment numbers coming out of University of Michigan. And I think you can read into those numbers in the indexes. No bueno. The market not liking what they see. People are anticipating a lot more inflation to come. Go figure. We're flinging tariffs left and right. If anyone's ever cracked an Econ 101 textbook, they know, you raise tariffs, you're going to raise prices kind of across the board. So surprising how that works at the end of the day. All that translating into a VIX cash that is looking a little bit juicy. Right before the show, it was kind of sleepy. We were up slightly. We were still hanging out, I think, around a 15.75. Right as we were kicking off the show, we were at 16.25. That puts us up 1.25 points and ticking even into further high gear right now. Right as the music finished, we were up to 16.5, up 1.5 points from where we were this time last week. So Vol looking a little bit spicier. Past his prologue, all of this will immediately die, and VIX cash will close the day down 1490. We'll see. This might have a little more legs to it, but we shall see. We've had our buddy Scott Nations joining us a lot on the show. In honor of that, in celebration of that, let's also talk a little VOLI out here. 13.5 VOLI, of course, being his kind of proprietary, just the facts, ma'am, vol. So if you're one of those folks out there that doesn't like all those puts and all that skew gumming up your vol works, you want just a straight at the money vol number, VOLI 13.5 when we kicked off the show. Puts it up nearly 2 points as well, up 1.75 points. And of course, if I pull it up now, it's nearly a 13.95. So VOLI off to the races as well. And our old pal UVIX, when we kicked off the show, was at a 99. That puts it up 3 points from where it was this time last week. And of course, as we rack it right now, it's up another point. So pretty much at 100, at par even. So things are looking a little bit frothy out there to wind up the week. Of course, it's been a very topsy-turvy week on the vol side, but we did see some new all-time highs. We had seen vol coming back into, again, the mid-15 handle. We joked on the show last week. Of course, we had VIX settlement this week. We joked that all those 15 puts we were joking on the show last week, we said vol was going to pop on Wednesday and then come back down the rest of the week. That's kind of how it played out. And now towards the end of the week, we are seeing vol getting kicked into high gear. So a lot to unpack out there. Let's go around the horn the way we started. Let's go out to the dark and stormy shores first. Mr. Rock Lobster, an interesting week. We joked on the show last week that those 15 puts were not really going to pay off, and that was indeed the case. And now we're looking a little bit spicier still, sir. What is catching your eye in the vol market this week and today?
So there's leave it to the single-digit VIX president so realize vol yesterday going into the open today, it was 10-day realized vol was the lowest in SPX since December. It hadn't been this low in forever when we had when we had the Santa Claus rally. And oh wow, look at all my thingies here going crazy, all my alerts. They're all downside alerts. But I think there's going to be some bargains. They don't like Google lately. But anyway, so also I got this here, and I'm not going to fill this. So sorry, I got this trades flying off at me. But the surprise here was so you have really lower realized vol, and then all of a sudden, I think the economic data started to catch up with I'm just going to say reality. So all of a sudden now we are, we have like the government's going to stop spending money, or apparently that's the narrative. Like all the tariffs and stuff, everybody's worried about what stuff's going to cost. And ultimately, it doesn't look like the tariff. I mean, it's making headline news, but I don't know what a big of impact it's going to be, because mostly they're talking about them. They're not actually doing them, but that's uncertainty. And then the second part is everybody's realizing, wow, the government spent $2 trillion more than it took in last year, and they're trying to not spend $1 trillion of that this year. That looks like the goal from whatever the news is, So, but that's $1 trillion less. So that's basically GDP for 2025 is going to be flat if we're lucky. Also hiring. Government's not hiring all of a sudden. They're actually kicking people out of jobs. So all of a sudden, that's going to weigh on the sentiment a little bit. So the reality is to kind of right-size things. Nobody likes to be the bad guy. The last bad guy that actually did something real was Volcker, probably 40 years ago. And it's been that long. Clinton with Newt Gingrich, maybe they did some budget work trying to kind of fix things up. And then the next 4 presidents after that basically threw their hands up and just did not care. Now all of a sudden, so yeah, there could be some real, back and forth on this. And the market's going to move around. So what I would say is there is a little action in VIX. What I did see today is VIX March puts, like a 17 put is like $1. And you can buy, they're $1.10. You can buy all you want of them right now. To your heart's content, you could buy VIX puts. So this kind of higher orbiting volatility, basically there's a situation, this is kind of what it feels like, where stocks go nowhere. So we're down 1% back up the day, down 1.25% back up to finish almost unchanged on the day. So you have low realized vol, but that's going to keep VIX at a 16 or 17, but nothing really goes anywhere. So, and that feels like what we've had for the last few weeks. While there are a lot of positive things, AI and, maybe more economic growth outside of the government, all those things are good, but the headline news is kind of crushing, I think hurting some stocks here. So but like I said, every day finishes, you're only down 0.5% on the day. So that ends up being low realized vol, but a higher ATR. And it's a market to trade, but for investors, it's a little oddball. For vol traders, since vol doesn't really go anywhere, it's kind of infuriating. So I think that is what's happening in vol for right now.
Interesting stuff out there. I do like the Oprah approach to the tariffs, though, whether they work or not. It's just, you get a tariff and you get a tariff. And no, you over there, you get a tariff too. Oh, you want a tariff? Here you go. Tariffs for everybody. It's wild times out there as we go off to, by the way, I like this sentiment from our chat. I like when our chat gets it. I like when our chat, they get how difficult it is to prep for some of these shows, like Vol Views, for example, where we routinely have to throw out just about everything that we've planned for the show in the minutes leading up to the start of the show. And that's what some Vol Views is. We've gotten used to it by now. We kind of roll with the punches. Remember the Hillary email scandal hit, the markets turned, Brexit, all these things popped off mid-show, if not pre-show sometimes. So we're kind of used to rolling with the punches here, which is why Vol Views is kind of the show that we're literally putting together on the fly a lot of times because the data is changing, the numbers are changing, the vol is obviously moving on a second-by-second basis. So I appreciate it when our chat gets it, that there's some effort behind the scenes to bring these shows to you folks, listeners, on a regular basis. But as we go around the horn, Mr. Rhoads, sir, obviously a shaping up to be another fun one. What's catching your eye out there in vol this weekend, indeed today?
Well, what's interesting about VIX this week until this moment is, Andrew talked about how low the close-to-close volatility has been for the S&P 500, and I think you could probably say the same thing for the intraday. And when I say intraday, I mean when the stock market is open, not when they're quoting that guy between 2 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. Chicago time, but during the real stock market times. And we've been at about a 1.5 range until the show started. To like 15.5 up to 6 or 15 to 16.5 or so, if I'm looking at the chart right. So we just broke out of that to the upside. And, I get beaten up on, and everybody knows that I'm consistently short VIX or S&P futures. Sitting here watching VIX bounce, just hesitate for about half a second on this week's high and then break through it. And that is keeping me short the SPX for right now, fully short S&P 500 for right now, because of the confirmation that we're getting as we make new lows. We're suddenly making new lows in the S&P this week. We're making some new highs in VIX. And we talk about that confirmation. And I did a presentation for a student group this past week and talked about this as well. And it's something they were very interested in, is when when you're not getting a new low out of VIX, when you're seeing a new high from the S&P 500 or vice versa, that can be telling. Andrew's comment that it looks like, that he's seeing a bunch of signals go off and they're all to the sell side. VIX working its way up to about 17 or so is kind of confirming that we should be paying attention to those signals. Now, I say all of that and we'll end up unchanged on the day, because that's the other pattern that we seem to have going on. I like the ATR stuff that Andrew talks about an awful lot, because it does take the intraday moves into account, and traders live that stuff. We've gotten economic numbers lately that'll hit the market in the morning and then we're rallying in the afternoon, or vice versa. And we're ending up very far away from our daily highs and our daily lows more often than not. So I don't think the 10-day realized volatility is a great indicator of how volatile and how nervous the market actually is out there.
Market is nervous out there, listeners, as indicated by some fun stuff we're seeing going up. Just in the middle of getting a flash poll ready for you folks. We'll get to all that fun in a little bit. Speaking of the fun, one of the fun things about the show is that the vol surface is always evolving, always moving. We try to just take a snapshot whenever we can to see what's going on in the vol surface, because right before showtime, the vol surface, especially the front portion of the curve that everyone's fixated on, was kind of literally unched. It was a snooze fest. Nothing much was going on out there, and right as showtime kicks off, we start moving, we start shaking, and that front portion of the curve gets a little bit frothy. Looking out across the broad spectrum of the surface now, people always want to know, 20 is that magic number. I know people just fixate on it. They want to know, is there a 20 handle to be found anywhere, dear Vol Views crew? And the answer this week is yes. We were flirting with it last week. We got all the way out to October, which is, of course, the beefy month in the cycle last year. Last week we were at around 19.5, 1945 on the show. This week up about half a point, so 20.05 in the October future. So there is a 20 handle to be found. Of course, if we look at the front portion of the curve, by the way, of course, February rolling off the board on Wednesday. We talked about that on Vol Views last Friday. So hopefully you had a good VIX settlement out there, listeners. If you've been listening to this show for a while, you avoid it like the plague, but some people like to roll those bones, so hopefully it worked out for you. Feb off the board now. March, right as of a few minutes ago, up about half a point in that March future, 1780. Of course, if we racked it right this second, might even be juicier out there. And we had April up about exactly half a point as well, hanging out at about an 18.5. So Interesting stuff out there. The front portion of the curve getting a little bit juicier. The curve itself obviously lifting up a little bit as well. Mr. Rhoads, let's go the opposite of the way we started. Let's go out to Dr. VIX first. What's catching your eye out there in the vol surface today, sir?
Well, it's interesting you talk about these volatility events that have kind of surprised us during the program. And a couple of weeks ago, we had VIX at about 15 and the front month future, I guess it would be the February future, at 16.5. Nice 1.5 discount for the index or for the spot versus the future. And we got, I don't know if we got the tariff thing. I don't know. We got one of these Friday afternoon announcements and volatility got going and the whole curve moved higher together. But the index moved about 50 cents more than the front month future. We're seeing almost the exact same thing right now. And the reason I bring that up is we did get some follow through to Monday morning, but not a whole lot of follow through to Monday morning when we saw the same situation and then a reversal. And of course, everything's fine in the world because I don't know, the president didn't say anything. So we're seeing the same sort of thing. We're not seeing as much uncertainty when you look out into the summer. Everything has a 19 handle, but there's more of an up curving shape to all of it. So I think it's going from, and we've got that October contract that does have your 20. I do think that the way that the curve is starting to play out with a little bit more of an angle as we go along is a bit more certainty or a bit more belief that we've got some certainty going into the next few months, but that certainty is for more volatility, not less, and probably more downside in the equity markets as well. So looking at how the curve has shifted, even though it's very slight, it does look to me like there's some longer term, and we can't even prepare for this show 2 hours in advance because of how things change sometimes. When I'm talking about longer term within the volatility markets, I'm talking 3 to 6 months. So it looks like there's maybe some longer term concerns for the overall equity markets that are starting to work their way into the VIX term structure.
Yeah, you get some vol, and you get some vol, and you get some.
I want vol.
Mr. Rock Lobster, same question for you, sir. What is catching your eye out there? As things are definitely getting spicy, even as Russell was talking, we're seeing moving, markets moving down, vol moving up, couple 100,000. It was looking not quite sleepy, but quiet, decently active, but kind of quiet in VIX land. 200,000 more contracts piling in almost as he was talking. So things are starting to spice up out there. Mr. Rock Lobster, what's catching your eye in the vol surface right now?
Yeah, I concur with, so I think the biggest thing on the vol surface is just the higher long-term vol. So basically some of the shorter term vols are dropping and, but like the long-term vol was kind of staying stubbornly up there, which was keeping all the vol futures higher, and they weren't really responding. I would say, like Russell said, the 10-day realized vol is a tough indicator because it has faults. It's only a close to close vol. Generally, you don't have a bear market though when realized vol is 8%. You have a bear market when realized vol is like 17 or 18%. But usually not like 8%. And again, this is only, I think we're only down about 100 points from the top or something. So it's not, it's like, oh, we're down. The market's down. We're not 61.40 anymore at an all-time high. So 100 points SPX is only 1.5%. But yeah, I think it's good for us to go down when market news is bad. And I think that's what people, I think are giving people some fits right now. Like the market news is not okay. It's not great. So when you have that, you've got higher vol. Volatility in SPX goes up. Again, the vol future is more expensive, and all of a sudden you have a little lift in volatility across the term. And right now, VIX cash and the March future are about the same price. So for me, as an indicator, that usually means that VIX is now becoming more volatile too. And the 9-day volatility is it's my favorite indicator. 9-day volatility is close to, but not jumping over VIX yet. So again, that's shorter term SPX. And that's telling you that's the kind of the vol surface part that you don't see anywhere unless you just pull up the indicator. It's a good indicator that the SIBO produces. And when that's over VIX, that's generally that's going to be a more volatile market. And it's because traders are now basically paying up big dough for short-term options. And mostly they just kind of sell them. And all of a sudden now they want to buy them. So I think we're getting close now to that number. We're not quite there yet, but because as long as we're in contango, that is still short-term vols. The short-term outlook is just not high enough. Like we're moving, but it's not enough to really set the world on fire. So what I would say is just be mindful of that as an indicator. It would be more, I would put more stock in this rally or this sell-off being real. If 9-day VIX closed above 18 and VIX cash is still here, that means that people are a little worried over the weekend and they're worried for next week. They're actually going to spend money on an option that's going to decay like wildfire in the short term. And that's the thing everybody's got to remember. Like the whole vol surface is also, is a function of like time decay, really. It's like normally traders sell options to make money. And I mean, look, this is the opposite of liquidity providers, right? They got to take the other side. So they're going to respond by moving volatility. That's what we used to do. 9-day volatility right now, because we have weekly options all the time, every day we have them. That's an opportunity if the market's really not moving much for traders outside the liquidity provider community to go whack those options and make money on decay. When that number starts to balloon, that means the narrative has been flipped. And now traders are expecting to buy short-term options that are decaying like wildfire and make money. So it's a huge change in sentiment. And right now, as we're talking, we're 1751. So I would say it's picking up a little steam. Like Russell said, we're picking up steam. It's a good indicator to watch. And generally, once that short-term vol starts to die, usually the sell-off in SPX starts to cool off a little bit. And then again, more downside. So we just hit another. I just hit another alert. But that's what we've got. So just be mindful of that at part of the vol surface. So there's the VIX vol surface, and then there is that 9-day VIX, which I think is a very useful indicator, but it's not. You're not going to see it in the VIX curve like at VIX Central, or you go to the SIBO website. It'll be kind of off to the side somewhere, but it's not right there front and center.
Well, what is front and center, Mr. Rock Lobster, is a lot more red on the screen. We're about halfway through the show now, listeners. And the market's continuing to sell off more. S&P closing in on 1.4%. VIX cash closing in on the 18 handle, right around 1780 or so. So up over a point since we started the show out there. So things are getting spicy. Mr. Rock Lobster, our chat is speculating we might need the logins by the end of the show. What do you think? We haven't had the logins. Haven't had little Kenny on the show in a while. What do you think?
I don't know if we're going to get the logins, but I feel like we're going to get to 20 today.
People used to love the logins. And then I remember we did it for like most of the show once, and one guy absolutely lost his mind. He wrote in like, I can't understand anything. It's all logins. But it was a good time. We haven't had a chance for any logins action. In fact, it's been so long. I don't think I even have it on this machine here. I have to go dig it up.
Didn't you get like YouTubed, or they just
whenever we did it
somehow by it, or
whenever
something?
We did it, YouTube would go crazy. But it was worth it. It was worth a copyright strike to have the logins in our lives at the end of the day. But yeah, things are getting spicy. I'm not sure if we're quite logins. I could play it just for fun. First, I don't have the file anyway. I can't play it. But I would play it just for fun. But we got to earn the logins. We can't just throw logins out willy-nilly, listeners. And if you're a newer listener to the show, you're like, what the hell are they talking about? Just wait a minute. We might get there. But yeah, VIX looking spicy right now, listeners. Like we said, it was right around 425,000 contracts on the tape right as we started talking pretty much about the VIX futures, a little bit after that. And right now already we have blown 200,000 contracts past that, 639 on the tape right now. Most of that, good chunk of that, just in the last few minutes, obviously. So things are getting spicy out there, listeners. The ADV is 806. That's down about 37,000 contracts from where it was this time last week. Obviously, if we continue in this trajectory, probably going to reverse that. Our proprietary, much ballyhooed, widely watched VIX top 10 indicator, listeners, TM, hanging out right now 9-1. Calls over puts out there, listeners. Let's see if we can find Waldo, shall we? 183,000 contracts. That's all it costs you to break into the top 10 in VIX land. That's a little light, but then again, we just had settlements. That's usually the case once a bunch of contracts roll off the board. Give it a week or two, you'll see it get juicy again. That gets you to the April 42 half. So right away, we're right up to the fun strikes. Number 9, 185,000 of the June 42 halves for number 2. So if April's not doing it for you, number 9, June. Number 8, $1.86 of the August 42 half. So we got a 42 half palooza here. Pick your month. You got a 42 half waiting for you for size. Number 7, 190,000 of the March 24. So right back down to, dare I say it, a nigh on reasonable strike. Number 6, here's Waldo, 200,000 exactly of the March 15 puts. The Rock Lobster's favorite strike, the 15 put strike. A strike we've flirted with many times and then bounced off of in just horrific fashion. 200,000 of those bad boys. Number 5, 226,000 of the April 20s. Once again, dare I say it, probably the most reasonable strike on the board here. Number 4, 310,000 of the March 25s. Number 3, 318,000 of the March 20s. So if you like the April 20s, you got to love the March 20s. Number 2, 355 of the March 60s, and number 1, yet again, 388,000 of the March 30s, 3-0s. And now it's that time, listeners. Time to get weird. It is time to get wild. It is time for Russell's Weekly Rundown.
Now, Russell's Weekly Rundown. Now, Russell's Weekly Rundown.
All right, Mr. Rhoads, have at it. Things are getting spicy. What's catching your eye, sir?
Things are getting spicy, and I'm going to tell you, if you're not, and you know, I have no interest or financial interest in this or anything else, but you know, if you're not an insider pro and you can't chat, you are missing some really great information in the chat today.
Dusty Rhoads,
such as
baby.
Where I grew up, what my father's name was, etc. So it's despite what's going on in the markets, the chat took a deviation, and I'll try to stay back on track from here on out. So we've got some decent weekly action this week. Tuesday, there were a whole lot. This is kind of interesting. There were a lot of short call spreads, and just a lot of bearish trades. Basically, every weekly trade was bearish on VIX except for one. And that one was somebody who's probably feeling pretty happy right now. They purchased 500 of the March 26, 23 calls for $1.15. VIX was around 1591 at the time. There was a short trade that I kind of liked. Of course, it looked better at the beginning of the show than now. Somebody bought 1,000 of the February 26th, 16 puts for 44 cents. A decent break even there. I did take a look at, well, I'll talk about that. Remind me to talk about settlement trades at the very end. We didn't have them this week because it was a standard settlement, but I did some investigating on settlement trades, and I'm going to tell people don't do them, and I'm going to tell them why. Wednesday, you got somebody came in, the first decent sized weekly trade on Wednesday, I guess was somebody copying the buyer of the February 26, 16 put. Somebody bought 100 of them at 35 cents. And then finally, something other than a vertical spread or somebody just buying an option. We've got I want you to talk to Brian Overby about this one because this is in his wheelhouse-ish. Somebody doing a broken wing condor, iron condor. They use the 13 and 15 puts on the put side. They use the 20 and 30 calls on the call side. They sold the 15 puts for 36 cents. They sold the 20 calls for $1.35. they bought the 13 puts for a nickel, and they bought the 30 calls for 60 cents. And again, this is February 26th, so the end of the month. And where they're looking for, if they hold it settlement between 15 and 20. I think every settlement this year for weeklies has fallen within that range except for one. And they took in a credit of $1.06. Of course, there is downside risk. If we're below 13, they would be out 94 cents. The real risk on this guy is to the upside. Most definitely to the upside. So looking at something between, they still make money between 14 and 21, but I think they want between 15 and 26. Yesterday, a ton of trades, and it was all very mixed. Of course, I put down a put purchase as the trade that I like in the market's rallying. But somebody did buy just under 1,000 of the February 26th 16 puts for 36 cents. I think maybe 20% of the VIX settlements this year would have caused that to be a gain. And then I did come across somebody selling a little over 2,300 of the March 26th 18 calls today at $1.70, back when VIX was around 1590. And then I've been looking at the, it's like you said, I love that we're talking a bit about how we scramble on this end when we're preparing for this program. And I did come across a buyer just before the program started. And maybe they've learned of the pattern that when this program gets going, so does VIX. But they purchased the VIX, and I want my screen to pop up so I can just tell. They bought a good number of the 25 calls, and they paid 15 cents for them. I think it was about 600 of them, but they paid 15 cents for the market was 9 cents by 15 cents. VIX was under 16, and they bought about 600 of the the February 26th 25 calls. And if you take a look at those now, they're only 12-cent bid, even though VIX moved 3 points. Gotta love that. So that was the point I wanted to make behind that trade, was that somebody, got it right, but just, unfortunately, I think the market makers, are aware of those trades and, adjust accordingly. And then finally, last week, I was running my mouth about trades into expiration, and somebody had done a bearish VIX trade into expiration last Wednesday on CPI day. And it did not do well, and I badmouthed it. So I went back and I looked at what has VIX settlement been whenever we get CPI on a Wednesday. How about that? And if you go back about a year or so, of the last 12 that were on Wednesdays, VIX was down 11 of the 12. Or the settlement was lower than the previous day's close. Needless to say, that was not the case this past go around. But then I went back farther, went back like 5 years or so, and the VRO, the VIX settlement, relative to where VIX closes the day before, when we get CPI on a VIX settlement day, it's about 50-50, higher or lower. We just had a trend where a whole bunch of them in a row had been lower. And I think people were starting to trade on that by using the recent history. When I saw the recent history, I said, well, now I understand why somebody was short VIX into the CPI. It's worked an awful lot lately. But when you use a longer term history, it doesn't work nearly as well as just the last couple of years show you.
Let's see what the volume numbers are showing us right now, listeners. Yeah, it continues to get spicy out there, up to nearly 700,000 now, 678 on the tape for VIX. So things are starting to get interesting out there, listeners. What's lighting it up today? The big dog, 51,000 of the May 36s. And before you get all hot and bothered, that's part of a vertical. Looks like that vertical went up 36,000 times against our number 4 today, the May 75s. Which is also the subject of one of our flash polls today. Just for fun, we thought we saw a massive print of the May 75s going up for 29 cents. They traded 36,000 times. Thought we'd ask you folks, at that price, are you a buyer? Are you a seller? Do you prefer it as the May 36 75 vertical, which looks like they did it? Looks like they bought it for 71 cents. Or are you just like 75 WTF? And right now, about 2/3 of you want to buy them. And about a third of you are just saying, what the hell? What's with the 75 strike? So I could see an argument for many things on that. Number two, 40,000 of the April 15 puts, which those just went up as Russell was talking, a whole block of them. So I went and looked to see what the hell they were up to. They bought pretty much 40,000 of them for 35 cents. So Mr. Rock Lobster, right up your alley, resetting the gun on the 15 strike, this time going all the way out to April. Looks like vol was starting to come in a little bit at that point, so maybe they got a scoop, but we thought we'd put it out to you folks right now. At that price, are you a buyer? Are you a seller? Are you not interested? And our literally just went live a few seconds ago, and our audience exactly evenly split, about a third each want to buy them, want to sell them, and just don't care. So we'll come back to those in a little bit once we have a little bit more time under our belt. But that's number two, April 15 puts. Number three, 39,000 of the March 20s. Once again, the 20 strike, dare I say it, the most reasonable strike on the board. Number four, the other half of that vertical, 36,000 of the May 75s. And number five, 32,000 of the March doubles. Yesterday, 799 on the tape. That seemed like that was going to be one of the banger days of the week, but we're probably going to eclipse that today. That gets us 80,000 was the big dog of the July 42 halves, all that opening. And it seems like apropos of nothing else, unless there's a funky ratio. Usually 42 half strike, there's a ratio to that, but it's obviously below our top five, so I'll have to go dig what the other side of it is. Usually it's probably 1/4, so maybe a 20,000 lot. But we shall see. Number two, 67,000 of the March 15 puts. Number three, 53,000 of the March 17 puts, listeners. Number four, 37,000 of the March 20s. And number five, 36,000 of the March 23 calls. Listen, let's just look really quickly to see if I can see the other leg. Yeah, it was 20,000. I was right. So 1/4 of the July 21. So it's the 21 42 halves. They did it 1/4. So obviously they paid $2.58 for the 21, sold 4 of the 42 halves for 82 cents. So they did that for a little bit of a credit. It looks like roughly around 60 cents or so. So you like that? 60-cent credit, 1/4, listener? Somebody likes it for size. A Wednesday, 676 on the tape. The big dog, 48,000 of the March 20s. Once again, back to the 20 strike. Number two, 44,000 of the March 25s. Number three, 40K of the March 17s. Number four, 36,000 of the April 45s. And number five, 35K of the Rock Lobster's other favorite on the board, the March 15 puts. Tuesday was the banger, kind of making up for some lost time because we were obviously closed on Monday. And also heading into settlements, that usually gooses up the numbers a little bit. 1.36 million on the tape. The big dog, 141,000 of the March 25s, followed by number two, 139,000 of the March 24s. The 24s were opening, so it could have been a little bit of a funky, tight roll down. Number three, 44,000 of the February 17s. Usually going into settlement, we see a lot more front month, the Feb. We only saw one in the top five. Number four, 42,000 of the April 75s. And number five, 37,000 of the March 75s. Mr. Rock Lobster, a lot of funky trades lighting it up this week, including today. We got that May vertical, 36.75 for, I think it was around 71 cents, something in that range. And then also the April 15 puts for 35 cents. Either of those float your boat, and anything else floating your boat in VIX options this week?
I noticed overall, like, even though VIX was kind of flat the whole week, VVIX never got too far away from 100. It was always like right around 100. So it was like, okay, the market's at new highs, but just volatility was never responding. So it would just look like a bunch of VIX call buyers that just did not want to go away, apparently. So that's what it appears like to me. There's a lot of VIX call buyers that want to go away. And I didn't see any big I didn't see any big call buyers. It was just the fact that VVIX was never really dropped significantly the whole week with the market not really doing much. That was the thing I noticed the most. So it did keep me somewhat on my toes. I kept some SPY put spreads, and I actually bought some VIX calls this morning. And we'll see what happens. But that's what I got right now, is like this slight bit of a surprise here.
What is a surprise, listeners, is that SVIX is starting to maybe claw its way out of the volume hole it's been in. That ADV continues to just evaporate, down to 4,400 contracts a day, down about another 1,100. that it didn't really have to give up. That said, it's put up about 4,600 today, so SVIX down to 25.5 now, down about exactly a point from where it was this time last week. The big dog today is still only about 500 of the 26 calls expiring today, so it looks like somebody maybe rolling those bones. But yeah, so we got some paper on the tape. SVIX really needs to kick into high gear from a volume perspective, though. It can't keep just hemorrhaging volume. That's not a good thing. And Mr. Rhoads' favorite, his beloved UVIX, was at a 27.60 when we kicked off the show, up about 0.3 of a point. Obviously, it has moved since then. It's up to 29.25 right now. So popping hard out there today, threatening the 30 handle again out there in UVIX land and starting to put up some numbers. It was looking pretty sleepy as well. Its ADV has also fallen off a cliff, down to 13,000, down another 1,000 since last week. That said, 24,000 on the tape today, so all it takes is a stark sell-off to get to UVIX and SVIX looking a little bit juicy, a little bit active again. Mr. Rhoads, I know you're always slinging a little UVIX against a little SVIX, sir. What's catching your eye out there in the twins this week?
Well, it's funny you refer to them as the twins because I think I got a systematic approach to rotating around between the two that I'm going to write up either, probably not this weekend, but in the near future. I've got a couple of other things going on that you are aware of that maybe we'll talk about at the end. But the thing with UVIX is I figured out, and this is a different product, but I figured out if you buy an SPX at the money straddle on the close, that expires the next day on the close, you actually do very well with that these days. There's so many products that are automatically squishing short-term volatility, like systematically in their selling, that as long as they've got a lot of capital, I'm going to be buying straddles basically every day. And needless to say, I'm really happy that I have a long straddle right now. But if I'm buying long straddles, I'm kind of questioning whether or not I need to be incorporating a weekend UVIX trade in there as well. So that trade might start to fade a little bit as an outright trade, but might be something I combine with SVIX over a long period of time to see how that works.
We'll say that straddle disease is really starting to spread. You're catching it. Overby, who's coming up later, he's been deep down the straddle rabbit hole for a while. Passarelli on boot camp, every week he's talking about straddles now. So all of a sudden, the straddle sickness starting to spread out there, sir. Have you caught the straddle fever, listeners?
I got it.
Hit us up. Hit us up. Let us know. I know, Rock Lobster, you're more of a strangle fever guy. You like a little bit of the strangle. What are your thoughts on Russell's straddle? And then B, what's catching your eye out there in the non-identical twins of SVIX and UVIX, sir?
I think straddle trading on the vol products works pretty well. You just have to make sure you close them when they pay. I have found it is a good place to practice not being greedy as far as that goes. And as far as SVIX, I've been waiting for that stupid product to go above 27 for about 4 months now. So, and that just tells you that, if SVIX can't climb, the volatility futures aren't moving because VIX keeps basically lifting up to them, around expiration. And it's been going on for cycle after cycle now. So that's what I would say, but I'm glad to see there's more volume in SVIX. But also, by the same token, the VIX futures, in order for SVIX to really make any money, you need, VIX has to start closing below 14, start getting into that, zone 1, that 12 mode vol, and just, anything under 13 basically. And it just hasn't been able to do it. So, while I like the idea of it, it has yet to produce any real dough in the last 6 months. SVIX, buying on dips and stuff, but no, none of that like easy, sustainable money I was looking for.
You guys picked the best time to dive into the SVIX waters, sir.
I believe, yes, we picked the worst time, I believe.
Probably the most difficult period in recent SVIX memory. But I tip my cap for you for continuing to fight the good fight out there. Are you fighting the good fight in some of these other vol products, listeners? maybe you're part of the UVXY defense force, in which case you're liking the fact that it's putting up some numbers today. Almost at a 19 even right now, 1895, up almost exactly a full point, about 0.95 from where it was this time last week. UVXY, obviously the neutered variant of UVIX, listeners. But you know what? It's not neutered when it comes to paper. 163,000 contracts on the tape. That's well north of their ADV, which is 98,000, which, unlike everything else in the vol space, is pretty much keeping its head above water. It's unchanged on the week. So, yeah, UVXY has the volume argument to itself. Let's see, top positions, or I should say top trades out there today. We got about 10,000 of the Feb 18 half puts against the Feb 10,000 as well. I'm not sure if they're a spread, but 10,000 each of the Feb 18 calls. And we see this a lot. People like to play fast and loose with UVIX and UVXY right around expiration time. They get right to the at-the-money strike, and they like rolling those bones, and it seems like that's what's going up right now. 20,000 of that, roughly 163,000 today going up in those types of trades. And let's just not forget Russell's favorite. It's VXX, 43.60 right now, up nearly a point and a half, about 1.45 points from where it was this time last week. Also catching the lift out there from a volume perspective. The ADV was actually looking respectable, 32,000. That's actually up 2,000. So VXX managing to add a little bit of juice over this past week. Today doing 53,000 contracts so far. So VXX looking spicy. By the way, the top position in VXX right now, 7,700 of the March 45s. We don't see a lot of nearer term upside in VXX. Usually the play du jour is like number 3, 7,000 of the March 35 puts. People play to the downside, but right now, 7,700 of the March 45s is the big dog. In terms of active prints today, like we said, people like to play fast and loose with, this is where we were. We were at 41.5 not that long ago. We've moved. We were threatening it. We've moved since then. That's the 41.5 puts expiring today have gone up 2,600 times, followed by 2,400 for number 2 of the 42 halves. So both of those strikes kind of handle a couple of handles in the case of the 41 halves out of the money right now. And then 2,300 of the 40 puts expiring next week. That's your big dog out there in VXX land. If you want some earnings vol updates, just head to the website, theoptionsinsider.com. Click on the Options News and Articles tab. We got all of the single name earnings vol breakdowns you could possibly want in your life. And because we like you folks, completely for free. But now it's time to see if the vol gods like us, because it is time for the crystal ball.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
All right, everybody, welcome to the crystal ball. And spoiler alert, I don't think any of us had this last leg up right during the show. It seemed to kind of screw all of us. Me and Scott the most. Last week it was myself, it was Scott Nations, it was the Rock Lobster, and it was Mr. Once and Future Dr. Vix on the show. I was at a 1535. I was looking pretty good. I was almost within bullseye range until the show proper started. Then we were off to the races. Scott was next at around a 16. He was looking pretty good for a while. He was also at a 1260 in his proprietary VOLI, which, spoiler alert, no bueno there either. We were already a point and change north of that by the time the show started, and about almost a point and a half, 1.4 points north of that, threatening a 14 right now. So no joy for us on either, or him, I should say, on VIX or VOLI. The Rock Lobster was at a 14.02. No joy for him. Like I said, we're at a 17.88 coming into this segment, listeners. And Mr. Rhoads was at a 14.47. So no joy for any of us. I guess I was the closest. At this point, I am not the closest. Scott is the closest. But he, of course, not here on the show. So I guess I will take the first swing. Give you folks some time to mull over there. Listen, and you know what? Things are looking a little spicy out there right now. As we're coming into the end of the show, VIX is threatening an 18 handle. We have the S&P off 1.4%, NASDAQ off 1.7%, Dow off 1.6%. So looking kind of spicy out there right now. The question is, will the spice remain, or will we get bland and flavorless again by the end of the week? I'm going to say, you know what? I think we still have a little bit of spice. Is it this much spice I don't know. I'm going to say 1675 for where we are this time a week ago, or a week from now, I should say. And next up, I do believe we have, let's see, Mr. Rhoads, you were next closest. I saw you put in something in the chat at the start of the show, a 17 handle. Was that your prognostication?
No, that was for today. That was where we're going to end up today. And I was goofing around a bit. I said 1701, and then we blew through it. So I said 1801, which is the high for the day. So I'm going to revise that and say I was predicting the high for the day, and I finally got something right. I am going to go with, and I do have a reason for this, I'm going to go with 1974 next week.
Ooh.
No, 1947. I'm going to do 1947 next week. And the reason being, I'm leaving the country. And whenever I leave the country, the market gets really volatile. And I end up having to stay up all night and try to keep up with what's going on. So the market is once again going to make my trip miserable. And we'll have a high VIX next week.
Are you going to be in Germania during the show, sir?
I am going to be in Germania during the show. So I'm going to have to miss out on you guys next week.
Well, you'll have to send us an update, see what's going on. There's some stuff popping off in Germany right now. Certainly interesting times out there. And Mr. Rocklops, the same question for you, sir. Where will vol be this time next week?
I mean, I have to follow Russell. I don't know if we're going to be, I guess we could be higher. It's just none of these freaking sell-offs even hold. So I don't like the tone I don't like the tone change though. So I'm going to go 1899.
I like it. 1899 for the Rock Lobster. All right, that music means we've come to the end of another volatility journey, as VolViews is wont to do. Keeps us guessing all the way through till the end of the show, which is what makes it fun. And Mr. Rock Lobster, folks want to guess with you a little bit of vol fun. Where should they go? What should they do?
Yes, optionpit.com, weekly profit cycles, which I'm going to go to right now. Check out all my products, learn how to trade, and get paid to earn. You know, all the alerts we put out and stuff should make the money pay for our products, which is crazy. But hey, we've been doing it for 14 years, so what the heck? We'll do it for another 14 until I want to just retire and play golf. All right, there we go.
There we go. Check them out, optionpit.com. Oh, the Queen Queen, what are you doing? Why do you hate me? 1685. You're carping me by 0.1. And Queen, that gives me faith in my prediction because the Queen is usually inerringly precise. So if she's only 0.1 away from me, that means I'm within the margin of victory, which is a good thing out there. Mr. Rhoads, I should say. You're not going to be with us next week. You're going to be in Germania. Maybe you can send us some email updates about what's hot from the conference.
I will. I'm doing a panel on V stocks on Wednesday. And VIX there are going to be some VIX questions in there. So I'll probably send you a little blurb to share with everybody so it's still timely.
So in the meantime, if folks want to keep up with all of your travel goings on and see what you're cooking, where should they go? What should they do, sir?
Just follow me on Twitter. It's at my full name, at Russell Rhoads. I got a Substack. You can always follow. I talk about the volatility markets every week in the Substack, and that's really the two places that I'm. And then I'm here every week.
Stay tuned.
This is the best place to follow me is right here.
Come to VolViews every week, and if you join in the live chat, you'll get some surprising secrets from Mr. Dr. VIX is all I'm going to say. A banger in the live chat today, listeners. If you too want to get those surprising personal secrets from the once, future, and present doctor, all I'm going to say is he should have been playing on our 80s wrestling trivia game. He would have crushed it. But if you want to check it out for yourselves, if you want to stay tuned, if you want to join us for the ongoing partay, that is Options Oddities, I will have to put Russell's Iron Condor to Brian. I have a feeling he might like it. He will be joining us in a little bit for Options Oddities. If you too want to join us, the optionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. Otherwise, it's going to do it for us on the on-demand side. I want to thank all of you who joined us throughout the week. Remember, if you missed anything, it's all available on the network feed. Yet another reason, if you're listening to VolViews, you should be listening to the full network. It's all there for you. See you back here on Monday for the option block all the way through to next Friday, another episode of Volatility Views. Stay safe out there, everybody.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.